Welcome to the Startup Grind.
So without further ado, I would like everyone to put a loud hand together for Paige Craig. Awesome, welcome.
Thanks, man.
All right, so normally we start these by kind of hearing a little bit about your background.
Yep.
So tell us where you grew up, what your parents did, and kind of a little bit about your childhood.
So I grew up in Sacramento and grew up on the wrong side of the river. We were homeless as kids. We lived in a car. We moved into an abandoned house on the river. Worked in my dad's shop. We cleaned antiques. We did picture framing, and yeah, we lived pretty modestly, but had a good family life. And then I got recruited to West Point. Went there. Realized I don't really follow the rules well, so my last year I went to my TAC and said I'm done with this shit. And I went enlisted in the Marine Corps, and went Marine Corps infantry, then intelligence, and worked intel for years. And then Iraq War kicked off, decided to drive into Baghdad on my own, build a private military company.
This is after you had left the Marines?
Yeah, I did Marine Corps, then I worked in the intelligence community for a while, and I went from that into quitting and just driving into Baghdad by myself and just figured out a business. And we did cool shit across, Iraq, Afghanistan, Lebanon.
I feel like there's something to elaborate on there.
It's a long story.
Yeah? What can you share about that first venture? Because that was the first time that you had started a company, right? And in Baghdad, it's probably a little bit different environment than in LA.
Yeah, it's, like if you imagine the worst environment to build a company, it's a place where you have no financing. I had pitched people on this idea and no one believed in me. And I was like, I remember I spent 2 months trying to pitch people to invest in me. And I put up my own money. I basically bankrupted myself. I used 5 credit cards, took my home and another home I had invested in, got an equity line of credit. So I scrambled together $70K, all through debt. And I drove into the country and just figured shit out. No one would bet on me, so I just bet on myself. And I saw many other people trying to do the same thing I was doing, which is this is going to be a big opportunity. There's a lot of shit to figure out. Almost all my competitors stayed in D.C., Northern Virginia, Tampa, where we have Special Operations Command there, and they tried to build their business from sort of the safety of the U.S. I figured I would just go out to Baghdad and figure out what's actually going on. And so I jumped in, to the battles of Fallujah. I went all around the country, and I just built a massive network. And I found a unique angle. I realized that we didn't have any presence outside the green zone, sort of the safe zone. So my concept eventually materialized into what I called insight and influence. We ran private intelligence, private weapons teams, and we found out things, our insight, which is largely human intelligence and technology, paired with influence, which could be direct influence, actually physically making things happen, whatever things the military or the government needs to happen, or it could be indirect through psychological warfare, all sorts of very fun stuff. We did cool shit building video games, running counterterrorism campaigns, but in the early days of my business, it was just a complete mess. We made money picking up garbage. We had $1 million contract to pick up garbage in the battlefield. We got paid $250,000 to go destroy a weapons lab. We took down these centers that basically tortured people and produced media. Those like beheading videos and shit you'd watch. We'd go find those places and get rid of them. So we did everything in the early days until it kind of coalesced into a large business that I could see, and I called that insight influence. And that was privatized intelligence and privatized outcomes paired with that intelligence.
And how long were you in Baghdad?
Well, the whole country. So
yeah.
I went everywhere in Iraq and neighboring countries as well. What I did is I nailed Iraq first, and then sort of words I learned later, I guess I productized what we did, and then I scaled that business into Syria, into Lebanon, into Afghanistan, into Pakistan, into Indonesia. But I got right first, and then I started to scale.
Got it. And so, this is all from your experiences in the Marines, right? You kind of
Yeah.
So what drove you to start this business, to just take all that risk? I mean, were there moments where you doubted whether it was the right thing to do? And if so, what pushed you over the edge to take that leap of faith?
Yeah, I questioned it all the time. I mean, I had moments where our operations got compromised by 2 U.S. officers who disagreed with our very aggressive operations, and they released it to the New York Times. LA Times ran a huge story about me. They published a top secret map, and the next day, a dozen of my guys were killed in Iraq. We had Congress call me up twice, trying to bar the U.S. government from ever doing business with me. I lost 2 girlfriends, I lost friends, essentially bet everything I'd ever saved in my life to make the business work. So pretty much every day, a few times a day, I'd wonder, is this shit worth it? Yeah, all the time. And then that's why I look for passion in founders. If I didn't believe what I was doing, if I didn't believe in the mission, then it would be so easy to give up.
Yeah. So how many years did that company go on for, and how long were you running it?
So I ran it for 5 years, and then I stepped back, and we sold it 2 years after that.
Okay. Was that 2008 and you stopped running it?
Yep.
Okay. And then you sold it in 2010.
Yep.
So 08, where are you, and what are you doing right after you stepped down?
So I take vacation. I've been busting my ass forever, and sort of took some time to breathe after my whole life from if I can, I don't know, just remember kindergarten on, working always. I always worked. I mean, I worked my dad's business. I worked in construction. I mowed lawns. I just worked my entire fucking life. I worked my ass off to get out of where I came from. And so after selling that company, it was the first time I actually could sit down and just think. So I took time off, and about a year of just looking around. I dabbled, and I went back to Africa. I did some fun stuff in North Africa. And after that last mission, I decided that I was going to go become an angel investor.
And so what was that transition like? Was it one deal that stood out to you and you were like, I need to be involved here? Or was the trend of angel investing had already started to grow?
The decision came from, I had an idea for a business which would bring microfinance to the very edge of the world, to the most fucked up countries in the world. I was thinking about pairing my background with sort of all the money people I met. Because once you make money, all the other people in the world who have money come talk to you, and then they're your friends. And so I started thinking about
friends.
Yeah. So I started thinking about all these capitalists are, they're very much afraid, and capital is a coward. So I was thinking about trying to find a way to bring that capital to places like Sudan, bring it to Mali, bring it to Pakistan, do a sort of like microfinance initiative. And then I just realized if I did that, I would be signing up for another 10, 20 years of conflict and combat again.
Yeah.
So, but along that way, that journey of thinking about that business, I met VCs in San Francisco, in DC, in Boston, and that's what led me to meeting angel investors and thinking, I really like this. I'll go try this out.
When you started meeting all these people after you had been successful with your first business, did you recognize that you were maybe playing somewhat of a different game than most angel investors because of your background? And if so, how do you think that all of the things that you had already done at this point up to 2008 helped you jump into being an angel investor in a high risk environment without second guessing yourself?
Yeah, I didn't. I guess I know I stood out because I wasn't from a tech finance background, but I didn't, and I still don't give a shit what other people think, which is important. As being a founder or a VC, you have to have your own independent thought, your own conviction. If you're someone who needs accolades or support from other people, you probably shouldn't. You should definitely not be a founder. You might get away with it as an investor, but I don't think you'll be a great investor if you don't have strong conviction, original thought, and follow up that conviction with action. So I think that was a result of my upbringing. Zero support from society. You just have to make your own way. And then Marine Corps is very much an execution society of getting shit done and doing the right thing. And I guess that and I think about people more than I think about business models and finance and macro trends. Those things are important to me, but my big filter is always people. And I have this long list of things I've written about people over the years, and I use that. I have sort of this macro view, these 5 questions I ask in investing, but I have this long list of characteristics I look for in people. And then after that, I start to think about the marketplaces, the themes that you're going after.
Let's start by talking about the people.
Yeah.
What do you look for in a founder? What are some of the traits that you want to really stick out to you?
So I look for, it's such a long list, but execution, which comes down to, is this person inclined to do things or talk about doing things, right? And so if you pitch me, most of my pitches in the beginning aren't show me a deck, show me a product. And there's great investors who are product focused or other market focused, but I have a conversation, I'm trying to figure out, I don't want to say too much because I have all these things I look for, so I don't want founders to game me and try to nail the things, but talk about the obvious ones, execution. I want people who do shit over talking about shit. There's a time for talking and thinking, and that's usually in the early days of your company. And then you set a strategy, you pick what you're going to do, and then you relentlessly do it, right? You stop talking about finding customers, you stop doing research about market segments and customers, and you pick up the phone, or you get an email, or you go to that person's office and you close business. If you need to build a product and you can't do it, you either learn how to do it, you build an MVP, you find a dev shop and you harangue them to build the shit for cheaper than they want to build it for. You convince the developer to come work for you, like you do something.
You have to hustle a little bit, right, to get some
You
results.
have to hustle a lot. Yeah, so I look for execution. I look for this psychological mix, a person who doesn't believe the world impacts them, that they impact the world. It's a big difference. You'll see people in life as you talk about their life, and it's especially easy to understand if someone comes from a disadvantaged background. Quite often it's easier for me to invest in women, immigrant minorities, where you have a disadvantage. It's harder for me to look at a guy, I back them, but someone who came from a good family, went to Stanford, like everything's lined up for you.
They haven't managed any chaos before, right?
It's just hard to look early in someone's life like that and understand. It's not impossible, but it's harder. But so I look for that drive where you believe you impact the world. It doesn't matter if you're born with one leg or you're poor or you're disadvantaged by being a woman or immigrant. Like it sounds weird, but it's easier for me to see through that lens of people who've overcome and they don't care about the prejudice in the world. They don't care about the world's unfair. They just make shit happen.
So what were your first few deals? If you can talk about any of those, and then just tell us, what the company was, what interested you in it, and then what you learned from those first initial deals.
Your early deals don't matter. I did Mobile Roadie, who I just invested in that founder. Michael Schneider built Service recently. My theory on investing was I'll just try shit. It's my money, and I'll just try it. And Brad Feld, who I had met early on, told me to do basically 20 deals in your portfolio, so I decided to do 20 a year. I was like, I'll just keep practicing, and learn from everything, because I have no idea what I'm doing, so I'll just try my own thing. So early deals, you don't really do well. I did Clout the first year. That worked out really well. But by the second year, I started to get better and seed-funded companies like Postmates and StyleSeat and AngelList and Lyft, and you keep getting better. And I constantly evaluate what I do, but I'll tell you, the early days, you just don't know what the fuck you're doing. At least I didn't.
Yeah, well, obviously in 120 deals, if you look back at the first 20, you're probably a little bit better than when you started, right?
A lot, yeah. You get a lot better every time.
Yeah. So you had already started angel investing, and then you actually founded another company called BetterWorks, is that right?
Yep.
What was that?
So BetterWorks was an idea which failed, and I learned a lot from it. But I had this idea that companies come down to people, and I saw all these just poor ways people ran companies. So we tried to create a product around perks, giving companies the ability to give you time off, gym memberships, food. The idea around the perks product was to be a wedge into a bigger idea, which was to be like a platform for culture in companies. We definitely overestimated how big that market was, as well as how quick companies were to pay for culture. It was a big. I made this really stupid mistake of talking to. I talked to about 50 founders before I did the company, different stages, But it wasn't until a year and a half later when we were like, how the fuck have we been so wrong? We realized like all we talked to were tech founders, which is also something I see in San Francisco a lot. So I made that same mistake of living in that bubble. We start to build something for a niche instead of thinking about what the bigger world needs. But we had a brilliant team, great product. We got to about $250,000 a month in revenue, and then we just stalled. We just couldn't fucking grow. We sat down, talked to the board, and decided we got to return the capital we just raised and shut this down.
And did you have a co-founder in that business?
Yeah, I had George Ishii, who's still here in LA, and Zhao, who's up north doing another startup, and works with SV Angel as well.
Okay, awesome. So now with 2 startups, you've already been doing angel investing. Now you're probably really starting to understand like the secret sauce behind successful companies. Did it start to become more apparent after you had closed it down that during that process of actually shutting down the company and paying your investors back, that you identified different things that you had done wrong that you could then look for in potential investments?
I don't know. I mean, I learned some things, but I started nailing great startups before that point. I was the first check into Wish.com, which has become the 3rd largest e-commerce business in the world, about $10 billion right now. Zen Payroll, and I seed funding all these companies. But I learned some things, but I think it was really that first two years of angel investing that really taught me the most. And you still learn things every year, but you just sort of get diminishing returns. I think what's new for me now is I've spent more of my time, we have a team of guys that work for us. I try to take what I've learned and try to push that to them, because I want those guys to become great investors or founders if they want to someday. But trying to push all that you've learned in your process to other people, that's a better way to scale now.
So talk to us about Arena Ventures and what went into starting an actual VC firm.
Yeah.
And what's happened since then, because I think that is a really exciting piece of your narrative, and also I think that's why a lot of people are here tonight, is because you're making a lot of noise on AngelList and also just in the VC scene in general, but especially here in LA.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much noise we're making. We pretty much spend most of our time just investing in people and letting them make noise.
Well, the syndicate, I mean, every time I go on AngelList, you're featured on the syndicate, it seems like, that you're one of the top syndicates on AngelList.
Yeah, it's a small part. So I started a fund with one of my best buddies. He was over at Fortress doing all these macro investments, and he's sort of a big macro thinker, huge bets in the big companies. We met up in Vegas, went out for like the spiciest Thai food in the world out there, and went gambling. We met years ago, and then we just started angel investing and hanging out. And then last year we decided, we've been talking for like a year about let's do something. Maybe an accelerator in LA, an incubator or something, but that merged into a fund, an idea to do a fund Thanksgiving of last year. And January of this year we sat down and said, okay, let's do it. And the whole fund thing, my partner, he knows that shit cold, so he raised the whole fund, he built it. I'd go out there like a puppet and be like, here's what I've invested in, here's my ideas. And it was pretty easy. And so we just want to get that shit done fast. Like, raising money for a fund is probably as painful as trying to raise money for a startup. And he made it easy, so we got the money raised. We raised a $40 million seed fund. A little bit different though, we do AngelList. So every time we as a fund invest, we're a traditional fund, except that we invest with AngelList. So every time we invest, we decide to let the public of accredited investors can draft behind every deal we do. And unlike a typical syndicate where some guy or girl might be putting up like $1,000 or $5,000, and you don't know if they have conviction, I say draft because we still have to run a traditional fund, so you get the same valuation, the same terms that we get, except that you know that we have to live up to the expectations of our own capital and the other dozen families that rely on us to invest intelligently. And we're hoping that we can open up great deals to the public of accredited investors and build more angels in that process.
And it works really well with AngelList too, because you were an investor in AngelList, and then it seems that it syncs up quite well. What are some of the early deals that you can tell us about with Arena?
Oh, the early deals. I mean, we've done 26. So talk about LA. Most people care about LA more than other places. So I think the hottest company in LA is probably my girlfriend's company. Lowell & Wolf is like this monster marketplace that has scaled to be the biggest interior design marketplace, interior design business as a category. The biggest one in North America in a year. That's become hugely popular. And there's a company called My Table, which is like an Airbnb for food, spread across LA this summer, just launched in Austin. We're in a stealth launch out there right now. I love that business because it creates employment for people. You know, remember when James pitched me this idea that immigrants, single moms, retired people, line cooks, like all these people out there cook, just like everyone has rooms in their home. So why can't they make meals? They're cooking for their 2 kids, their husband, their wife. Why not let them cook another 10, 20, 30 meals a night and make 40, 60, 70K a year? And in return, I can get a great, healthy, home-cooked meal delivered fresh to my door, go pick it up. It's just, you look at companies like Munchery and Sprigg, and then you hear an idea like My Table, and you're like, shit, there's no CapEx. I don't have to build a kitchen. I don't have any menu risk. I can push almost all the value down to the guy or girl that's cooking, and the consumer gets a great deal. It's like one of those highly scalable businesses that changes the world. So that one fascinates me. Produce Pay in LA is a payday loan company for farmers, basically. Farms have to, you know, every time harvest season comes, you're sitting there and you got to pay hundreds of people daily, weekly wages, and then you take all your produce to market. They don't pay you for months. And you have this huge cash flow problem. So Pablo comes from Mexico, grew up in a farm in Mexico. His family's business almost went out. Not because his dad couldn't grow great produce, but cash flow issues. So he figured out how to fix that problem with very low-tech data collection. And now he's providing, he was supposed to do maybe a few $1 million in loans this year, and he's going to like 50x his goal already.
That's incredible.
And so, you know, there's a number of companies. Service, Michael's doing this customer service thing, something that solving bad experiences that affects rich, poor, every demo. So there's a few different companies. We've done 26 deals, so there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, for
You know,
sure.
what's unusual is our last, I was talking to someone today about this, our last 3 companies we just funded, one in LA, one in New York, one up north, were all 3 female founder CEOs. We don't have a social mission, but it's interesting. I just keep seeing year after year more women, more immigrants coming into the startup scene. It's not as biased as it used to be 5 years. There's a lot more to go. It was just unusual that the last 3 just ended up being all female founders.
Yeah, and I think that kind of plays in my next question is what themes are you looking for, industry specific? What should people know about Arena? Like what type of companies should look towards you, and what type of companies are you looking for specifically?
So we gravitate towards consumer. I think I really get consumer, I think I can empathize with consumers better. I sometimes like enterprise deals, but the reality is I have a better track record in really feeling what a consumer product, a consumer service should be. So I love consumer. That's marketplaces are a real specialty. Consumer services through mobile. Fintech, we like fintech a lot. And our ideas evolve. We're really hot on some weird ideas right now, one of which is how do drones impact consumer products and services, not hardware. We don't do any hardware. There's a lot of shit we don't do. We don't do hardware, we don't do cryptocurrencies, we don't do anything where you have to actually manufacture shit.
No marketing tech either, right?
No ad tech. Well, think about marketing tech sometimes, but ad tech I specifically don't like.
Okay.
It's a great industry. I don't like things I don't understand. Like I don't know how to make physical widgets, so I don't like people that make things, and I don't like ad tech. So I like consumer and I like fintech a lot. And specifically marketplaces. So drones, for example, we're looking for how, because we believe that drones are going to become more pervasive. There's a massive body of professional and unprofessional labor out there that's going to use drones. So how can drones impact the world around us? So we just funded a marketplace. Can't talk about it yet, but they're applying drones paired with virtual experts. It's a really interesting model where you take a drone operator who's could be anywhere, but it's still a local problem. They fly a drone over a specific target, and then there's a remote expert who's retired or disabled, and he gets to, or she gets to apply their expertise to this unique high-value problem, and it creates a whole new experience for consumers, and it also applies to enterprise too. So we're always on the lookout for interesting shit, but marketplaces are a hot topic for me.
When did you make, that was the seed investment in Laurel and Wolf? With
First check, yeah.
Okay, awesome.
And the second, and the third, and the fourth.
Wow. So before we open up for questions and answers, I just want to talk a little bit about being a founder and being an entrepreneur. So what is one big mistake you see entrepreneurs, specifically first-time entrepreneurs, make over and over again?
And there's so many. I meet so many people that like the list of mistakes is huge, but sometimes taking too long to execute, being too cautious, thinking that you need more information, that you need to prepare more, instead of just doing shit, even if it's small. I have this philosophy around think big, execute small. Have a big story, a compelling story, because if you can tell a good story, that's free. You don't need funding for a story. And a great vision, a great narrative will help you hire people, get partners, get press, get money. So have a big vision, but at the end of the day, spend most of your time just doing shit that focuses towards that vision. I see founders who think the path to entrepreneurship is I have to get funded to build a company, which in reality turns off just about every good investor. But I think that you're the kind of person who, if you get money, you build the company, and if you don't get the money today, you don't, then I won't invest in them.
Yeah.
Because true entrepreneurs build the business not because someone funds them, but because they have to.
Well, and capital should just be fuel for a fire that's already burning, right?
Not necessarily. I don't look at it that way. You don't have a fire burning. It's more like you might have some really small coals, but no fire.
Okay.
But if you can't build the coals, like I'm not buying the coals.
Yeah. So as far as LA goes, you're from Sacramento.
Yeah.
Why Los Angeles?
I like the city. I came here as I was touring around looking at different cities, and I love creativity. LA is a very, when I'm not doing tech shit, I hang out with artists and musicians, and I love the outdoors, and I talk to creative people that, I love creativity. When I think about companies, one of my rules is to invest in things I love, and part of that is creativity in the business. Whether that's expressed through, I love people that do great content marketing, people that do very visual, creative stuff. You won't see it in every deal we do, but I thought that LA was a great place to work with creative people. Second, it seemed like a real city. San Francisco is great, but it's more like a scene from Star Trek than it is like a real world.
Yeah.
And I like the outdoors. And so it was like on a personal level and a creative level, and also strategically, once I decided to be an angel, I realized I can move to San Francisco and sort of work with a bunch of dorks, or I can and be one of many dorks in the city.
Yeah.
Or I could live in LA and have a great life and have a real impact in a city that in 2008 I thought would be huge, and strategically build a great rep here and leverage that into SF deals, which is exactly what I did.
And so we're at Pivotal Labs, obviously, so we're talking engineering talent. How do you compare the environments in San Francisco if you're a founder and you need to get very experienced high-level developers, and if you're in Los Angeles?
They're both extremely difficult, but in different ways. So in San Francisco, there's a lot of people to recruit. You generally have shorter timelines, so if you don't nail your business quick, your engineers are vulnerable. They're being hit up every day. But it's not they're being hit up on LinkedIn, because most engineers are blind to LinkedIn. They're physically being hit up, right? Like San Francisco is so dense, you can't work out, take a hike, grab a cheeseburger without rubbing shoulders with someone who's going to come try to recruit you. LA, you have a little bit more time to recruit a team and keep them loyal and execute against the vision, before someone starts trying to prod them away. But there's less people here. What I've seen change lately is there's a lot of developers from the Valley, from New York, from other cities, who want to come to LA. They've now seen their friends leave Facebook, leave Twitter, leave Google, or move down to those campuses here and realize that there's a great city. And so I think it's a lot easier. I know it's a lot easier seeing firsthand my company's recruiting developers from from San Francisco and bring them to this amazing city where you can work on amazing projects. There's fintech companies here, there's ad tech, there's marketplaces, there's hardware, there's amazing companies, and by the way, you can have a good life here. Like it's not just a bunch of sci-fi shit.
No Star Trek here.
I love Star Trek, but I don't want to live in
Star Trek over Star Wars.
It's such a different genre.
It is. Yeah, it's tough. We'll see, I guess, in December whether it's worth it. Disney. So, talk to us about founders, right? Because I think early on, a lot of people make mistakes by surrounding themselves with the wrong people. What would you say to entrepreneurs who have an idea and understand that they need to execute, but that they need people to execute? How do you find the right people to join your founding team?
Oh, it's really fucking hard. You have to do it. That means, I just had this conversation with the company we founded. We like founding non-technical people. We're not scared by that. We quite often found them, and I just had the talk around how do you go find the smart technical people now. And I was like, it's really hard, but here's the process. And you go to a lot of fucking events that you're targeted, and the great thing is LA has a shitload of these events now. You write up a job description, but it's not just, I need a Ninja, Java, ASP.NET, whatever the fuck you write. Like what makes you different, right? Don't write I need these engineering skills, because every asshole here needs those engineering skills. So what's different about you? Tell that story, and talking about, don't recruit based on, I need 5 years of experience, blah, blah, like, this is our culture, this is what we do, this is what we believe in. And I believe in this, hedging and wedging strategy where write it in a way that lots of people aren't going to like the job description, but if someone who's a good fit sees it, they will like it. Generic descriptions are poor.
Because it weeds out the people you don't want anyways, right?
Yeah. So be very upfront about what it is you do, why you're different, about your culture, and suck some of them. And also, I've learned from other smart female managers that when you write job descriptions, don't get too, a lot of women are much more critical of themselves than men. Men always overestimate their abilities, and women are just, they're a lot more honest. and men have a lot more bullshit. So when you're writing job descriptions and you're thinking I need more women to apply, quite often you should talk about, your culture and teamwork and how you guys actually work, and try to avoid these bullshit, requires 15 years experience. Does the engineer actually require 15 years experience? And avoid long laundry lists of requirements. There's a lot of women, this is a generic statement, but will look at all these requirements. If they don't feel like they hit every single one, they generally won't apply. The guy will be like, well, I have half of that one, I'm qualified. No.
Makes sense. So, 2 more questions I have. First of all, what piece of advice would you want, if you were sitting in this seat watching yourself, 20 years ago, what piece of advice would you want to have? So what can you give our audience tonight, whether you're a founder or whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you love startups? How do you start building towards success?
So I think a very easy recipe is, I just think of these 2 overlapping circles, and it's what do you love and what are you good at? And if you can find that intersection, that's the shit that you should do. Not the stuff that pays you a lot, not the stuff that you're bad at, unless it's something you want to get good at. But find the areas where you're really good, find that unique expertise or develop towards it, and find the thing that you love. And if you find that intersection, you're going to make that shit work really well. The other way is I love art. If I pursued art, I'd probably be shooting heroin in alleys. I got no idea what I'd be doing.
Yeah.
Right? And if I just do the stuff I'm good at, blowing shit up, I'd probably be, who the fuck knows, with ISIS right now.
So, what does the future look like for you, right? I mean, you're obviously really busy with Arena right now, but you've gone through a lot of different pieces in your career, from the military to starting your own companies to angel investing, and now you have the fund. Yeah. Is there a goal that you have set for yourself, or is there something that you want to accomplish more than anything else?
No. I live day to day, love life. I don't have goals. It might sound weird, but I'm not a very goal-oriented person. I know the things, so this always sounds weird because my girlfriend is very much like a planner, detail oriented. And I'm a lot more like, I love the world and I'm ready to take whatever comes, but I know the things I like doing. And so I love reacting to shit that comes my way. And so that's how I travel. Like, I buy the one-way tickets and I just figure out what the fuck I'm gonna do. I make up as I go along. It's the same way I invest. Like, I don't know, I'm open to anything. People pitch me weird shit. And I'm like, oh, I really get that, I like that. And I have a whole laundry list of things I want the world to create. But generally I'm a lot more, I sort of have like my process, my beliefs, the things I look for, but I don't really have goals.
Do you have any mentors or people that inspire you?
No.
What is your favorite trip that you've taken? Or a place that you potentially want to go to?
That's two very different questions. Which one?
You can start with the first one.
So the first one, so the best trip I ever did, Komodo Islands, sort of very remote islands in Indonesia. And I spent, you have to go to Bali and then fly about 2.5 hours east, jump in a car, get on a boat, and I spent 2 weeks just diving, five dives a day. This is where the Komodo lizards live, but I love diving. And Indian Ocean is like being pulled in these massive straits, and it's just one of the most beautiful, pristine places in the world to go dive. So that was probably one of my favorite trips ever.
Have you gone back?
No.
Will you go back, or is that not something you want to do, revisit a trip?
I like to try new shit all the time, so
Yeah.
I've gone so many places in the world, and there's 500 more I want to go to.
What's number one that you haven't been to yet?
Number one. I'm kind of pulled towards going to South Africa. Doing like the tabletop mountains, the shark diving, scuba diving with the whale sharks as they come down the coast. So that's pretty high on my list right now.
That's exciting. Well, let's give a big round of applause.